Good evening, viewers, and welcome to the Art with Worlds. Today we have a very distinguished guest with us, His Excellency Mr. Frederico Silva. How are you?
I'm very fine, thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Silva is Ambassador of Portugal to Pakistan, and he is also a connoisseur of arts and culture. It has always been a pleasure to talk to him. Thank you very much for spending time with us today. And we'll have a discussion on Portuguese history, art and culture today. 10th June is Portuguese National Day. Generally, most of the countries have their national days which relate to their day of independence or something very important at national level might have happened in those countries. It was a pleasant surprise to know, very, very unique thing, that Portuguese National Day is the actually death anniversary of one of its greatest poets. What does it tell to us? Was it that his poetry was able to, or instrumental to define Portuguese nationalism, its glory, its maritime expansion? What is it which makes you that poet's death anniversary is your national day?
Well, thank you very much for the question. That is indeed a very deep one, and to be rightly answered, of course, we would need to approach a lot of aspects of Portuguese history. But as you said, on 10 June, we Portuguese, we celebrate our country and our people and our history. 10 June, why? Because as you said, I believe that Portugal probably is the only country in the world in this condition. It's a very important day for us, not because it was the foundation of the nationality, not because we had a big military victory, not because we had a great revolution, but more simply, that's because in 10 June 1580 died what is considered the best symbol of the Portuguese culture, of the Portuguese history, of the Portuguese culture. It's a poet. It was a poet named Luís de Camões, widely known as Camões. And Camões was so important, why? Because being a man with a lot of cycles in their life, he lived in Portugal, in Europe, he lived in Africa, he lived in Asia, in India, in Macau, in other parts of Asia. But most importantly, he was an incredible, well-cultivated and erudite person. He knew very, very deeply the old classic epic of the Greeks, of the Romans and others. And he was the author of a very, very acclaimed work, a big epic that narrates the history of Portugal. The history, the main facts, but mostly the moment where Portuguese people was pioneer in connecting the 5 continents of the world by sea, the navigators, in the 15th and 16th centuries. And then this book, this fantastic epic, I have it here with me, it's called Os Lusíadas. It's like an epic poem, everything in poetry, and it's indeed a very deep and very literary, perfect narrative of all the facts concerning the Portuguese history. So when it was decided, it was discussed which day should be the national day, it was decided, and with very big popular support, that it should be the day of when Luís de Camões died in 1580.
It's good to know that most of the countries recognize their country's spirit with poets, artists. Like once I read England of Shakespeare. So this is like Portugal of Camões, if I could pronounce it correctly.
No. Actually, that's true, and even personally I can add a little detail. For Portuguese people and for Portugal, poetry and music, but poetry also, is a very privileged way of showing the soul or exploring the darkness and the lights of the soul. Just to contextualize, we, Portugal, we are, I believe, the oldest country in Europe. We are a country, a nation, a state, since 1139, with a defined territory, a central power, a population, one language, and the sense of unity. And so it's almost 9 centuries. A very old country, and our history was very much driven by the navigations that started on the 15th century. So to celebrate this history, it's really, this day was chosen, and it's not innocent that the name of our national day, it's Dia Nacional de Portugal, National Day of Portugal, of Luís de Camões, the poet, and of the Portuguese communities. The poetry, as I said, is very important, and just to give you a detail, I was born in this beautiful small city north of Portugal, 50 kilometers east Porto, old city, more than 1,000 years, called Amarante. And Amarante was the birthplace of a lot of cultural figures, political figures. But the number one, by far, is clearly a poet also. Name is Teixeira de Pascoais, and is like very much respect even today. And every city in Portugal will claim the same kind of situation. So poetry is indeed important for us.
Well, it's said that Portuguese people have a lot of interest in different arts and cultures, poetry, music, dance, and they celebrate it most of the times. Summertime is, it is said, it's the time of musical festivals. Could you please just let us know salient features of what we understand by Portuguese culture, arts, and literature?
Sure. Look, culture is the way that one person, individual person, or one people breathe. It's the way that the window of the individual, of the window of the group is wide open. And people that is interested to see should look for this culture, the window of culture, to get some familiarity with the identity of the other. So, since the beginning, since 12th century, Portugal was the place where several cultural manifestations were taking place. Again, starting with poetry, we have this Middle Age kind of poem, the troubadour, the songs of love, the songs of hate, very typical of this phase. But also on other areas, the music, the architecture, the folk culture. And so during these 9 centuries, everything that we created, everything that we received and we mingled was enriched by manifestations, by influences coming from all other continents. We Portuguese, we are a very mixed ethnic group. We are the result of a lot of people coming and mingling and becoming Portuguese since very soon, not only from Europe, later on from Africa, a lot from America and from Asia. So we are the result of our history, and so we have our culture. What marks our culture is the openness to the influence of the other. We incorporated it, we also exported it. And just to give you a small example, I'm here in Pakistan for 1 year. And being indeed very much interested in culture, in music, because I really believe that culture provides you a window. And if you want to look inside, you should go to the window and know where the window is. And so I'm being very touched by the impact of this, the Qawwali music and the Sufi poetry and music. And it reminded me one of the books that I read with more interest in my teenager ages. It was this gentleman from Persia, Mr. Omar Khayyam.
Omar Khayyam, yeah.
Omar Khayyam, that was indeed a big influence to me. And then in Pakistan, I'm discovering so many new things. like the Sufis, and like even contemporary music done today that I can really connect very easily. And so the culture, the Portuguese culture, it's not easy to summarize it, but I would say that it's a result of all the small rivers that came and that fed this big lake that is the Portuguese soul. So everything is absorbed, everything is recreated, everything becomes part of the thing, of the whole thing.
Well, you talked of Portuguese soul. It is said that fado music, if I if I pronounce it correctly,
You perfectly correct.
is a window to Portuguese soul, and it has also been classified as intangible heritage of by UNESCO as well. So, could you just tell us about fado music and how? I mean, I understand that you have a great tradition of folk music, fado music, and then modern music as well.
Sure.
But I'll start with your.
As you said, the music in Portugal is very diversified since the beginning. Of course, you can find easily a lot of different rhythms, a lot of different perspectives of putting in sound what the persons want to express. That's the meaning of the music. It offers a way, a tool, a vehicle to express the inner circle of the identity. And all of them are important. All of them are relevant. We are now in Europe a small country. We are 11 million people in 900 square kilometers, but a huge diversity. Being a united country, a united people, a united culture, we don't have any problems of regionalism or whatever. We have a big diversity of rhythms, of food, of culture, of ways of doing things. And music is one of them. But indeed, I agree with you. If we have to define like the flag holder of the Portuguese music as a mirror of the Portuguese soul, fado clearly will be the option. It's a very old crossroad of rhythms. It's sometimes melancholic, but not always. Sometimes it's very based in expressing feelings of hope, feelings of loss, but also feelings of positivity. It's the kingdom of saudade. Saudade, it's a word that apparently it's almost impossible to translate to any other language because it's not only nostalgia. It's something very complex but defines very well the Portuguese soul. This saudade and the fado is very much focused also on this mental universe. And so, I have here this book, Para uma História do Fado, for a fado history, and it's a very rich history. And so I can maybe say that it's the result of the crossroads of cultures and peoples put in contact with the navigations. You can find aspects coming from Brazil, South America. A lot of aspects in fado coming from Africa and also from Asia, where Portuguese were the first and unique Europeans during 1.5 centuries. So between the arrival of Vasco da Gama to this part of the world, to Calcutta, after passing the Oman coast, where today is Gwadar, the Persian Gulf, the Arabic Sea, and then all the fleets that followed. But between 1498 and 1650, the Portuguese were the only ones to navigate in these seas, not only in this part of Asia, but reaching, of course, China, Japan, Australia, and other parts. So fado reflects it, in my opinion. We have a very strong revival dynamic of fado in Portugal. Every year you can find new fantastic singers and instrumentists. We have a specific Portuguese guitar. It's not a sitar, but it's the same concept, but it's only this kind of guitar that is done only to play with fado. And so one of my projects, indeed, it will be during my stay in Pakistan, my very enjoyable stay in Pakistan, to bring here maybe a lady fado singer with 2 instrumentists. This is the basic setup, one Portuguese guitar with one bass classic guitar and this voice. Normally without micro, they sing like that. And I'm sure people in Pakistan, the persons in Pakistan would connect, would relate very easily with the mental universe of Fado.
Why is Fado so melancholic? Why is so sadness in that? Is it because you're traveling adventures and most of the people go into the sea and would come late after years or so, and it's a longing and desire or sadness or something else?
It's not always sadness or melancholic, but it's very often sadness and melancholy. And also, it's related with it. You know, in the 15th, 16th century, a standard boat leaving Lisbon or Algarve to come to all African coasts or Brazil or coming to Asia would bring aboard like 200 people maximum, even the big ones, one boat. So it was sure for all these 200 people that 1/3 of them or half of them for sure will not come back, would not come back by this or this or this. And so this feeling of being split all around the world impacts a lot the families, the society, the people in general. So it was very common to say goodbye thinking we'll never see you again. And it happened very often that, or because the people was dying, or because people stayed. We had a lot of settlements, just to mention some in Asia, people that was coming with the fleets, and they settled. Most famous is in Goa, Damão e Dio. It was indeed a very important presence, but not only. In today, Sri Lanka, Colombo was founded by Portuguese. In Malaysia, the big settlement of Malacca. In Vietnam, in China, in Indonesia, in East Timor. It was very common, these settlements. And I'm compiling some information, interesting information related to today Pakistan. Because I have not the confirmation, but apparently there are signals that make us think that there is a village in Gwadar region, I don't remember exact name, I think it's Jain, that was settled by Portuguese. What is quite common, because there were settlements in today Bahrain, in today Kuwait, in today Saudi Arabia. So the Gwadar coast in the 16th century was part of Oman. And we know that also in Oman there were Portuguese settlements. So probably it's true. So it's a connection also with Pakistan or the settlement. So these people half of them will not come back to near their families in Portugal. And of course that creates this feeling of loss, anticipated loss, melancholic, fate. It's like it's our fate, because indeed we Portuguese, we are in Europe, that's true, but history made us not only Europeans. We don't feel only Europeans. The sea, the south, the other continents were since ever, 6 centuries now, the destination. Our best people, our best money, our best energies, they were navigating with the boats and not staying in Portugal European. So Fado reflects also these feelings of anticipated loss, of anticipated nostalgia. So it didn't happen, but I'm already nostalgic. But can be also the vehicle for the poetry again. There is also now a generation of young ladies and boys that become very well-known Fado singers, that they go to the poetry, they took the poems, they put music on it, and they create Fado. So there is also this dynamic.
And I can also relate to our poetry as well. I mean, it's also full of the travelers going away and their beloveds waiting at the home. And especially in the times of Second World War, when a lot of people, young people from here were recruited to British Army to fight in foreign lands. So there was a lot of poetry which was yearning for those who had gone away.
Absolutely.
But coming to again, I mean, there are a lot of things we have to talk about, and I just do not want to distract myself. There's another aspect of Portuguese arts, and that is architecture. It's Maulin architecture, which is
Manuelino.
Sorry, My pronunciation is
No,
just English.
Yes, no.
So would you tell us your architecture, its influences,
Sure.
and especially tiles?
Tiles and no, architecture is a very
Portuguese tiles are very popular in construction industry of Pakistan as well. Spanish and Portuguese both.
very good.
Yeah.
No, architecture is also one of the art manifestations that talks more about that reflects more the history, that reflects more what is happening in the day-to-day life of a nation, of a country. And of course, you mentioned this style, Manuelino. It comes from the name of the king, Manuel, that I share as one of my first names. I'm Manuel Frederico. And so King Manuel I was king when Vasco da Gama, in 1498, after 8 years of not successful tries and a lot of people in boats drowning, he discovered the way of passing Africa from the west, the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean. And then he reached Calcutta in 1498 and opened the first connection between all the continents. And so Vasco da Gama was indeed that man, and he was under the orders of King Dom Manuel I. So it was so impactful, the discovery of the all-sea way between Europe and India and Asia. It was some historians, they compare the trip that lasts 2 years in boat without carts, just navigating by the stars, like going to the moon, the same impact. It was so unimaginable at this moment that indeed the King Dom Manuel decided to celebrate it in several ways. One of them, it was ordering the building of enormous monuments of all kinds, palaces, churches, administrative buildings, celebrating the sea. And so the Manuelino style, it's full of details connected with fish, with the boats, with stars. It's very recognizable. And Portugal has a lot of these kind of monuments. But even before this period, architecture was a strong thing in Portugal. After that, it continued to be. And that's not an innocent that we, Portugal, we have 17 architectural sites classified by UNESCO as World Heritage. That in Portugal. But if you add the Portuguese built monuments, forts, churches, buildings all around the world.
So speaking of it, art of tile making.
Tiles. Tiles are very popular in Portugal. You can find it in the walls of a lot of different kind of buildings all around the country. Lisbon, it's an amazing open air museum of tiles like Porto. And it's clearly an heritage from the presence in today Portugal of the Arabs and the Berbers from North Africa that have been in our territory since starting the 8th century till the 12th century. And even today, their heritage stayed after Portugal was constituted. They became Portuguese. But in the south of Portugal, the kind of architecture, the kind of music, the kind of way of doing food, the kind of way of dealing with water, it's very much the poetry again. It's very much impacted by the Arabic. And tiles, of course, also. Tiles and ceramics, I think it's one of the... We are very keen on blue ceramic in Portugal, like in Pakistan with Multan. Mm-hmm. And tiles, you can find it everywhere. It's a very old way of working the decoration of a lot of different kind of buildings. So it's part also of our cultural environment.
Okay. So now coming to poetry, as you had mentioned earlier in the beginning, that poetry is the main aspect of your arts and literature, and I agree with that. After these classical periods, a few poets which are known to me, and Fernando Pessoa in particular, could you tell us the trends in Portuguese poetry during all this time, and some words about Fernando Pessoa as well?
I'll try. As I mentioned several times, indeed, the history of Portuguese poetry is almost parallel to the history of Portugal itself. And the poets in Portugal, of course, they are very ecumenic in topics, in issues, but the influence of what's happening around, it's very much present. And we really have, all along these 9 centuries, a big number of very interesting names. Starting in the Middle Age with this Middle Age kind of poetry, more systemically used in the courts, between nobles, and then evolving, like the Portuguese history was evolving, to another kind of topics. The discovery, the quest of identity, the interrogation about the other, the fusion with the other, and the impact of it. So the poetry absorbed it every time. Fernando Pessoa is like, there are some researchers that don't believe that he's human, because the work of Fernando Pessoa is indeed very challenging. You cannot imagine. It was a poet that was able to create like 70 heteronyms. So he created it seriously. The voices were very much different. And 4 or 5 are the most well known, but it was more than that. Himself is a classic case of a Portuguese person. He was born in South Africa. He was born in Lisbon, but very young went to South Africa. Then he lived also in several Zimbabwe today. Then he came back to Portugal. He was very impacted by all the history of the Portugal, but not only. He was an absolute erudite. He was reading compulsory. It was very deep in being aware about all the other literary traditions known by him at this moment. And so the work of Fernando Pessoa is something very unique, and that's quite fair. I believe that is considered in a very unanimous way one of the really big poetic voices of the world, all considered. And that is quite interesting.
Yeah, it has been translated into Urdu as well, I guess.
Exactly. I have here a fantastic book with me that I'm very proud, and I was very happy to find it when I arrived to Pakistan 1 year ago, 3 months. Because it is an edition, a local edition in Islamabad of Fernando Pessoa poems. It was an initiative of one of my predecessors, the ambassador Fernando de Castro Brandão, and in cooperation with the Academy of Letters of Pakistan, there was an academic from Dr. Anwar Zaidi, was appointed, and he did this fantastic work. So this compilation of poems like that, they have the poem of Fernando Pessoa in English on the right side and in Urdu in the left side. It's a good compilation. I guess that there are another book of Fernando Pessoa already translated to Urdu called The Book of Disquiets.
Yes. And
if you don't mind, I will take the opportunity, because it's connected with the history and everything, to read just the first one.
Yeah, sure.
First poem that he wrote like that. It's a part of a book called The Message. This poem is called The Portuguese Ocean, and it's connected with fado, with soul, and this poem is like that. So this poem of Fernando Pessoa, Portuguese Ocean. Salt-laden sea, how much of all your salt is tears of Portugal? For us to cross you, how many sons have kept vigil in vain, and mothers wept. Lived as old maids, how many brides to be, till death, that you might be ours, see. Was it worthwhile? It is worthwhile all, if the soul is not small.
Wow.
Whoever means to soil beyond the cape, must double sorrow no escape. Peril and abyss as God to the sea given, and yet made it the mirror of heaven. So this is one simple poem of Fernando Pessoa, and is available in Urdu too. That was
Yeah.
a very good thing. It's a fantastic
Great.
poet.
Yeah.
But also, if you allow me, we have.
I was coming to, you are talking of Saramago. Yeah, Saramago is one of my most favorite writers. I have read his works, and I'm particularly impressed by his work, which is in English it's known as Blindness. And it has also been translated into Urdu by one of our finest living poets, Ahmed Mushtaq. Ahmed Mushtaq Sahab. He has translated it as Andhe Log. This is a beautiful translation. So I'm very much impressed by Saramago, and I want to hear from you your impressions, your understanding of his works.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure because indeed Saramago, not only because he is the only Portuguese writer that got the Nobel Prize, what I think it's quite unfair, but he got it in '98. But he's indeed a fantastic writer. He was able to identify some genius ideas around which he was building. He built fantastic narratives. So he is a very strong influence in the literary contemporary wave of young writers in Portugal. And one of them that got the prize Saramago when he was 20 years old, I have the pleasure this year to bring him here to Pakistan.
Yeah.
He came here, he developed some interactions in Lahore and Islamabad. In Lahore he was part of the literary festival, and in Islamabad he was also part of a lot of interesting discussions and meetings in universities and with other writers and authors from Pakistan. I believe that you had the pleasure of
Yes.
the opportunity of talking with him. And just one word, it is this gentleman, José Luís Peixoto. So he's a very good writer too, translated in 30 languages or so. And he continues a little bit, not the tradition of Saramago, they are different, but we have also in prose, in fiction, a lot of interesting writers. If you want a personal note, I would say I really like very much literature, and for me, one of the biggest today alive writers in the world, among others, is a Portuguese one, still alive, and he really built a fantastic work called António Lobo Antunes. It's just very exceptional too. So probably will be, if justice will be there, Prize Nobel one day. So it's not only poetry, we also have very strong authors in theater, dramaturgy, and of course prose like Saramago.
Okay. And have you interacted with Pakistani literature as well, and Pakistani art and culture? What do you
Surely.
If you have to say something about it.
I really believe that when you arrive to a country, whatever you come to do, it's very important for you to understand and to listen to the other and to see how the other reacts, how the other do the things that make the day happen in all terms. And so I had in the beginning two big goals. The first one, it was to travel as much as possible inside Pakistan. Islamabad is a beautiful, green, organized city, but Pakistan is very much more. And I knew it by reading before coming and by listening. So in the space of 6 months, I think I managed to go 1 week to Karachi, 2 times to Lahore, 1 week in Peshawar, Abbottabad, Taxila, Murree, and 2 times in Gilgit-Baltistan, in Hunza, in Gilgit, and Skardu. So in space of 6 months, to see and to admire the diversity, but also to meet people and to learn with them. And so clearly I immediately realized how complex, how rich is the culture or the different sources of culture in Pakistan. Politically, Pakistan is a young country, we know, but culturally, historically, it's a very old country. So, and a lot of rivers coming from all around the world came to this lake and brought their way of doing things, and their cultures too. So, my second goal, it was to explore the maximum possible the generosity of the cultural agents in Pakistan, not only in literature but also in music and also in painting. Pakistan has an incredible, strong and interesting painting generation, contemporary ones. I'm not talking about the fantastic Mughal school that is amazing. So many sources of joy and of wisdom, if you want. But also literature, of course. In literature, I was happy to find some good advice, and so there are some authors that I read with a lot of profit, that I'm reading still. And just to give you some example of books that indeed I think are feeding my curiosity and my search. I have this one from Mr. Osama Siddiq, Snuffing Out the Moon, from Lahore. This book of poetry, The Gaze of Tausif Khawaja.
Tausif Khawaja, yes.
Also living in Lahore now. This interesting book, the selected works of Abdullah the Cossack, of Mr. Naqvi.
Yes.
I think he lives in Karachi.
Karachi.
Of course, the books of Mr. Moshin Hamid, also fantastic works. I have also this book to read, The Verdict of Osman Hanif.
Okay.
And also I read a book, I don't know if you know him, the name is Other Days, from Mr. ARSHAD WAHEED. And a little anecdote, I think we met my first week in Pakistan.
Yes.
I heard, I don't know how, that there was this book launching in Serena by the Asian Studies.
Asian Study Group,
And I went there and I was happy enough to meet you and to have this book. So it's a very rich tradition. Of course, unfortunately, I'm not able to read in Urdu. It's a pity for me, because I know that there is a very rich dynamic of writing in Urdu only. I hope that it will be translated one day, because... And also, just to give you a final appointment about words, books are made of words, and words, they came from places, they came from situations. And one thing that I really enjoy is discovering every day new words in Urdu that are Portuguese words.
Okay.
Also, in Portuguese, we have words that came from here. Just to give you an example, these books are in an object that Urdu follows the Portuguese word. This Portuguese word is mesa. Mesa.
Basil?
Mesa.
Maize,
Mesa.
It's a Portuguese word?
It's a Portuguese word. It comes from mesa, that's for sure, that I researched. Also, the object to open and close the door, that's 100% Portuguese. It's chave. It's the Portuguese word chave that came, and if you go to Africa, to all the coast, and if you ask to a person that lives on the coast, what's the name that in your ethnic language you give to the object of, they will say chave. That I know, I've been there. Chave, so it's a Portuguese word. Camisa, shalwal camisa. Camisa is a Portuguese word, or it's the inverse, I'm not sure. Probably it can be a Urdu word that came. Shal, it's a Urdu word that we use in Portugal. My mother has a lot of shals, it's the same word. In Portugal we say all the time, Oxalá, when we want to express, oh, it would be good if something will happen. We say immediately, Oxalá. So the words, the boats, they came with people, and they went with people, but also with music, with words, with food. There are a lot of Portuguese gastronomy. If you go one day there, you'll see a lot of influence from this part of the world, like from Brazil and Africa too. Music, words, literature, feelings, and also people, because people was marrying and creating more people, no? The mixed people. We have a lot of it in Asia. If you go to Malacca, Malaysia, or to Vietnam, or to Bangladesh, or to Thailand, you'll find a lot of descendants of the marriage, mixed marriage between Portuguese and ladies from, like in Guadar, probably.
So in cuisines, did you find something similar, Portuguese taste and Pakistani taste in dishes?
Look, here in Pakistan, I found three things that are three of my favorite things to eat. Two are fruits, that is oranges and mangoes.
Mangoes.
So I'm in the right place. But also I like rice very much.
Okay.
All kind of rice. And Pakistani food is very diversified again. What you eat in Peshawar is not the same that you eat in Punjab.
Yeah.
There are a lot of diversity, it's normal. But I love Pakistani food. Sometimes too spicy, even if we like spicy food, because we are very much impacted also by Africa, by Asia. But I cannot say never no to a good biryani, it's impossible, because it's too good. And I really like Pakistani food. And there are connections. Of course, if you go to Portugal, you'll find those connections in the restaurants.
Coming to these cultural connections and interactions, it would be very interesting to hear from you because I understand that Portugal has been interacting with different cultures in different phases of history. Prehistory, and then Roman influences, then Arab influences, then Portuguese interactions with its erstwhile colonies. So I would like to hear from you, how did it impact different literary arts in Portugal, its language, and vice versa? I mean, how much Portuguese artists influenced other countries, particularly the countries which were once their colonies, and their impact of those colonies on Portuguese art and culture.
You're right, it's a very strong two-way road. Yeah. It was a very long road, so we are talking about 7th century, 6th centuries of contacts, of interactions. And of course the impact of one side on the other side, it's huge, it's huge. You can find it in a lot of aspects of life, in a lot of aspects of culture, in a lot of aspects of civilizations. We also, every part of this puzzle that history made to use the Portuguese language and to feel connected by it and by history, as is its own identity, its own strong points. And so it's not like that the uniformity is there. No, there is a lot of diversity, but the connections are still are there too, and it's very strong. So the impact of it on culture, as we mentioned in the words, the vocabulary, the language, the gastronomy, it's very, very strong. And it continues. We continue to feel very much connected between the peoples of the today independent countries that were historically part of the Portuguese Empire, let's say like that. This is very, very strong. Just to give you an example, in literature, there are strong movements, very, very specific movements of literature in countries like Brazil, that's clear, but also Angola or Mozambique. There are incredible good authors coming from these countries, like Mia Couto from Mozambique, a fantastic author, like Abdoulaye Yala from Guinea-Bissau, very good writer too, like Luandino Vieira from Angola. There are good writers even from East Timor, Rui Sinati, poets. East Timor, as maybe you know, it's the only country in Asia that was today a Portuguese colony. And East Timor today is part of the Lusophone community. They have Portuguese as official language. They are the youngest country in Asia since 2000.
Yeah.
And they also have a literary tradition of their own, but of course impact also by the contact. So that is a reality.
Okay. So what do we understand by Lusophonic culture? I mean, it is just connected through language? And particularly I also want to hear from you your thematic relationship between Portuguese literature and the literature of its colonies. I mean, because they have a different perspective. One is the perspective of a conqueror, and the other is the perspective of the nation which was conquered. So what's this relationship?
Yeah, you're right. So the relationship is very wide. You have as when you look today to what is being written in Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, Cape Verde, and other São Tomé e Príncipe, East Timor, you see two different dynamics, I would say. One dynamic that is, let's say, engaged in this goal that is a very legitimate and important goal, to build a new sense of identity of the independent country, of the persons that were already there or that were born there. Because some of the archipels that now are independent, they had no population. Population is a mix of Portuguese and Africans, like Cape Verde is a total Creole country. But of course the literature, the culture is also instrumental to build a new sense of identity, and it's very important, very relevant. But we also have another dynamic of writers and poets and fictionists working with high standards, universal standards of creation, of topics. So we have these two dynamics, and of course, even on the Portuguese side, Portuguese European side, if you want, there is also these dynamics. There was dynamics more connected with the sense of being the part of the empire, but a lot of them totally connected with the modern and contemporary universal dynamics. So that's a mix of these two dynamics that I see today happening in those countries, like in Portugal.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for talking to us this evening. It was wonderful, and I listened and learned so much things from you, and I'm sure our viewers would have also enjoyed my conversation with you.
That's me, that I'm very grateful to you. It was a pleasure. I believe that when we talk about books, we are talking about life.
Yeah.
And when we talk about culture, we are talking about the core of existence. So it was a fantastic moment provided to me by you, and I thank you, to mirror the history through the books, through the message, through the culture. It could not be more appropriate in this day that is approaching, of the 10th June, where we are celebrating the Portuguese National Day, oldest country in Europe, Luís de Camões, this fantastic poet, and the Portuguese community. We are 11 million in Portugal, but with 6 million more spread all around the world. Like before, today it's happening again. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much once again. So thank you, viewers, for watching us. See you next Sunday, same time.